Hello, everybody. My name is Jo White. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced certified schema therapist. And I'm really happy to be here with Helen and Janis to talk about integrating the body into schema therapy. So, Helen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Jo. Thank you for having us. So I'm Helen Startup. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist, previously in the NHS for 20 years and now more in private practice. And I co-direct Schema Therapy School with Janis. And previously I've worked in specialist settings for personality disorder, psychosis, and eating disorder. And yeah, I'm just really interested in how to kind of maximize schema therapy really to support people.
Thanks, Helen. Janis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Janis Briedis. I'm a counseling psychologist and I am director of Schema Therapy School with Helen and a schema therapy trainer and supervisor. And so I worked in NHS for many years and now I work in private practice and run Schema Therapy School and various trainings around the country and abroad. And I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you both for coming and giving your time to share your ideas with us. I know there were lots of people on the group that were very pleased to see that you were coming to present to us and excited to hear your ideas. So we've got a couple of questions for you, and then you're going to share a couple of experiential exercises with us as well, which is great. I know everybody really appreciates how do you actually apply it in action, in session. So I'm sure that everybody will be keenly listening to the experiential exercises. So, okay, let's have a look at, I will just change the view. And I think the first question is to Helen. So, Helen, what are the benefits of integrating work with the body into schema therapy?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, if we think at a very basic level, think in terms of modes and schemas, and particularly those modes and schema that are kind of more primitive. So I'm thinking about things like abandonment, people's sense of core trust in the world. They are typically encoded bodily. So it may be a kind of posture, it may be an urge that people have, such as an urge to run, for example. Or people talk about a felt sense in a part of their body, such as a kind of particular feeling in their tummy, which may have a really long history to it. And this is largely because a lot of these sort of quite primitive mode and schema triggers linked to primary survival. And so they're going to be encoded primarily at quite a visceral level. We may not even have that much access to our cognitions at that time. So it makes sense to think in terms of many of these schema and modes as having a body-based or embodied signature. And I think it can be really helpful at the point of sort of conceptualization, really, and mode monitoring to help people to become aware of some of these, what are quite early signs, really, that there's been this kind of triggering. But of course, you know, the other thing is that, as we know, not everything can be accessed verbally. So, you know, if we think about things like infant modes and, you know, the sort of pre-verbal nature of some of the states that we're trying to connect with, it is very much about a sort of correspondence and an attunement of the therapist's micro movements, for example, gestures and body language, and the micro attunement and the gestures of our clients. And so, you know, the very core of reparenting of some of these modes is very much about, you know, our bodies and our bodies communicating. But of course, you know, in schema therapy, we're often talking about how do we resource our clients? How do we keep them within our window of tolerance? And of course, you know, the body and working with the body will be a primary resource that we can support people with. But, you know, there's also the sense that, you know, some core modes such as healthy adult, how do we help people to have an embodied sense of themselves when they are in touch with their healthy adult? But similarly, thinking about a kind of playful child modes. I mean, children, when we see them out in the world being free and spontaneous, they're often doing this by physical movement and gesture. And again, when working clinically with these parts of the self, often really underdeveloped, we're wanting to do this through promotion of different ways of working via the body. So I guess I would say, across the board, whether it's about sort of tracking modes, whether it's about building awareness, whether it's about making contact with some of the more primitive and early modes, or whether it's about resourcing clients or about our relationship with our clients, the body is absolutely key, really, in terms at all stages.
Thank you, Helen. It makes such a lot of sense, really, doesn't it? To be, it's an extra dimension, isn't it, of being able to monitor the schemas that are going on, the relationship, how to help somebody to, I guess, notice what's going on in their body when they've been triggered, but also in terms of developing that healthy adult mode. So
Absolutely.
It seems like why would you possibly want to leave it out?
Yeah, it seems obvious, doesn't it, when you stand back and think about it?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so question for you, Janis. So where's a good place to start with integrating body-focused interventions?
Yes, so the starting points can be various, and that probably depends on what the need is, where the client is at. So obviously this is not an approach that you would take with every single client, sort of focusing every session on the body. But I think probably a good starting point is thinking about how we keep the body in mind when we do our usual interventions. So I guess one point we want to think about, to build on what Helen said, is thinking how different modes manifest in the body. And it's very much about understanding that, modes and schemas, they are not only cognitive or emotional structures, but they're also somatic structures. And each mode will come with its own particular sort of somatic aspects. And the first step is to really understand and be aware of that. And recognize. Also, the second point is thinking about how different modes may relate to the body. So, for example, there might be modes that may hijack the body, or we can even think of parts, modes or parts, depending on what model you use. There are modes that will treat the body with, sort of sometimes hatred and dislike and disgust. And, there will be modes such as punitive critic that will be busy punishing the body. And also there will be other parts that will feel the pain, such as vulnerable child, which will be sort of deeply embedded in the body. So in some way, each mode comes with its own kind of story and the way that it relates to the body one way or another. There will be also modes that will probably deny there is body and it's not important at all, such as maybe a detached protector that has no curiosity, no interest, because its main job is to keep the client out of the body. So I think that kind of maybe is the first point, to think about that. When we think about clients who've experienced quite a bit of trauma, for many, the trauma will manifest in the body. So really, you could probably say, a bit like Bessel van der Kolk, some of you may know, is talking about that there is really, it's not possible to have a trauma without that being experienced in the body. So, it is sort of almost by definition an embodied experience. And that can manifest in lots of different ways. And for many clients, the body is the place of trauma. It's not a place you want to go to. It's deeply unpleasant. It's frightening. It can be highly triggering of all sorts of modes. And it's really, in a way, the last thing you want to do. And in a sense, through lots of traumatic negative experiences, the body has become the carrier of the trauma in a way. And that will give rise to lots of different coping modes that we work with in schema therapy, that can lead to even dissociation, fragmentation and so on. So in a kind of very broad sense, what we're trying to do, by putting embodied healthy adult in charge, we're trying to befriend all parts and the way that they manifest in the body. And also, like I mentioned before, there will be modes that, and also Helen sort of implied that there will be probably modes that are mainly somatic. And often when we work in kind of standard ways that sort of relies primarily on verbal narrative, we may sometimes get stuck, because what do you do with something like a pre-verbal story, which manifests through symptoms, sometimes sort of medically unexplained symptoms, but is likely to be related to, negative past experiences. So we want to, be able to work with that. And so this approach, I would say, opens a door that allows us to expand our repertoire and to work more broadly beyond the limits of words and images and, kind of more cognitively sort of based type of work. So in terms of where we start, let's say, so Helen already mentioned resourcing. So with trauma clients where it doesn't feel safe to go in the body, and I'll do a little exercise in a minute. The question is, how do we restore sense of safety somatically? And for many clients, it's a deeply challenging question, because many people may have lived a whole lifetime of not feeling safe, coming anywhere near or feeling anything in their body. So where we want to start, so this way of working is very gentle, it's very slow, and it's very much driven by the client's own sort of intuitive sense. So it's not something that we sort of come sort of with our ideas with and then sort of teach in any way. It's very much a kind of bottom-up approach where we get the client to connect with tiniest sort of nuggets of safety or glimmers, if you like, using polyvagal language, of where there might be very early, tiniest signs of safety, and we want to build on them. So it's very much this kind of a intuitive, collaborative, sort of attuned process where, through attuning ourselves to our own bodies, of course, very importantly as therapists, and then attuning to clients' bodies, we're encouraging clients to attune to their own bodies in a way that feels safe. So, and it's a very, very, it can feel like a very slow process, and you may get a little bit of sense of that in an exercise. But it's very important because, working with the body can feel quite frightening for people, also for therapists who maybe don't work in that way, because there's some literature that talks about, body being the highway into vulnerability. And in a way you could say, working with the body can be a highway, motorway into vulnerable child mode. And we don't want to bulldoze into that by accident. So we want to go very, very slowly, very gently. And that's why we use a lot of resources to make sure that the way it's done doesn't flip client outside of the window of tolerance, and clients learn to feel in control with whatever emotions or somatic sort of feelings they come up with. So maybe just to give you a few examples of that. So, resourcing can mean lots of different things. One thing is to recognize that every client we all have somatic resources, and sometimes if we're not tuned in, or maybe we come from a particular angle, we can misinterpret that as maybe a defense or a coping mode that's getting in the way. For example, clients who close their eyes in the middle of the session, that we might think, oh, the client is avoiding, what's going on, let's stay in contact. And actually, when we turn it around and we look at it from a resource point of view, the client is just resourcing themselves because they might have been overstimulated by too much contact with us, So the approach is very organic. It's very, very gentle. It's attuned. It's very mindful. It's very non-judgmental. And it's a way of really, I would say, using curiosity as one of our main tools to explore what that means for the client, rather than us putting meaning on it, And so the second aspect of resourcing is maybe using experiments with client to find new ways that might help clients feel better. So basically resourcing, the main resourcing question is, does that make you feel better or worse in the moment? If it makes you feel better, then we are onto a resource. So that can be a good thing. And let's build on that. Let's explore it together. And that can be a wonderful thing. So it could be something like, let's say, clients who might find it difficult to set boundaries. Yeah, so we might start with a little somatic experiment where we just ask the client to put up a hand in front of us, like a little way in, and say, okay, just stay there and explore. Let's explore together. What is it like to hold hand? And you will be, even now, probably seeing my hand in a screen, I imagine people might be having already reactions because, our bodies remember things that our conscious minds often don't. And that can be already enough to trigger a whole host of material. And also we can then use it as a way to develop new resources. So this is a start of a setting boundary of maybe learning to say no. How many clients have you had who said, well, I don't know why people get confused. I keep saying no, but I think I'm saying yes. It's like, why are we getting so confused here? And actually when you study that closer, you see that the words don't match. The verbal story doesn't match the story of the body. So, and we're looking at these kind of dissonances and see, where is this discrepancy here? How can we align the body to also say no when you say verbally no? Yeah. So learning, we're starting with little slow gestures and then working from that point. And so maybe the third point, and I'll finish in a minute, is we can add body focus to really any schema therapy technique. So coming back to schema therapy model. We have lots of wonderful techniques that we use, chair work, imagery, flashcards, you name it. And so we can enhance and enrich anything that we already use in schema therapy by adding little somatic edge. So for example, it could be something like at the end of lovely imagery rescripting work you've done, and the vulnerable child has been very soothed and brought to safety and so on. And we could say, where do you feel that safety in your body right now? And I can't say, oh, I feel that kind of openness in my chest right now. How about you put your hand on that place where you feel that right now? Yeah? So it's a tiny little thing, but it can really enhance that experience of safety. It's like, I can finally, I feel that protection of my own hand. I feel that warmth coming from my own hand. Something like that. And then we can stay with that a little bit longer. So again, thinking about a slow pace. Just stay with that and breathe for a moment. Don't rush. Let's really slow down and really savor the moment. Just really feel into it and tell me what it's like. So it can almost become like a whole new sort of addition to imagery experience, imagery exercise, where we really deepen that sense of being soothed, being connected, feeling warm, feeling, good within and safe in our bodies and things like that. So just as an example, so lots of different ways we can do that. And also this can be a somatic flashcard. We'll talk about that a bit later. But somatic flashcard, a little bit like a written flashcard. It's like, what are the things I need to remember from the session today? So this could be gesture, holding hand on the chest to say, okay, this is my somatic anchor to remember I'm safe and I'm connected. And every time I feel a bit wobbly, feel a bit unsure, I feel a bit unsafe, I put my hand on the chest and remind myself what I did in that session. And this brings back that memory of being safe and connected again. So an example of somatic flashcard. Okay, so hopefully that gives enough of an answer. So I'd like to invite everyone to join a little exercise. Exercise of somatic resourcing. So just to say, don't do anything that is triggering in any way. So whoever may be listening, Just do only what feels safe and right for you. It is kind of an exercise that is about that. But, you know, sometimes what happens when we go into our bodies, different modes and parts suddenly come up. They also want to speak. So just contain that a little bit and do only what feels safe for you right now in the moment. And don't feel like you need to do anything else. So, let's maybe take a moment and connect to your bodies by taking a deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground if you are sitting down, or if you might be lying down or whatever, just feel the contact between your body and the ground, the earth, or whatever you're lying on. And if it feels comfortable, you may want to close your eyes. If not, you can just gaze away from the screen. And so there are two possible starting points. I'll give you two options. One is you can think of a situation in the past, hopefully in a less distant past, when you felt safe, you felt connected, you felt embodied, you felt grounded, you felt contained. So some of the attributes that we associate with healthy adult mode in an embodied sense. So see if you come up with an actual experience, a moment when you've actually felt like that. If it is difficult to recall a memory like that, which may be the case, because I'm putting a little bit on the spot now, see if you can find a little spot in the body where right now, right here, you're feeling okay. Where there might be little glimpses of some of those feelings that I mentioned before, feeling connected, feeling grounded, maybe content. So you may find your own words that suit better, but something along those lines. And so if you have a situation or memory that comes to mind, see where that resonates in your body right now, and take a moment and check in with that very slowly, gently, without pushing. And take a few breaths, breathe into that spot in your body. Breathe in. If it is the whole of your body, then do that with the whole of your body. And maybe internally describe to yourself in a few words, what does that feel like? What is it like inside? And when you go in that place in your body, see if it resonates anywhere else in the body. See if it maybe expands a little or moves. And then notice, are there any emotions that are associated with that? Does anything come up right now as you connect with that? And again, we're just kind of like exploring. We're not forcing, we're just being curious. If nothing happens, nothing happens. Just be curious about that. That's okay. Just allow whatever comes up. And so, as you connect to this experience, I'd like to invite you to make little adjustments. So, see if you can now connect your breathing to that resource that you found in your body. See if you can, in other words, see if you can find exactly the kind of breath that this moment makes you feel a little bit better. Maybe a little bit embodied in a safe way. A little bit more connected. So there's no one right or wrong way of breathing. You need to find your own way and let your body gently guide you towards the breath that feels right. If you're unsure, try a few different types of breath. You could try a deep, long breath. you could try something a little bit more shallow. Then what you could experiment with next is notice where your feet are. So it may be fine as it is, or it may feel a little better if you push your feet into the ground a little bit more to get more of that sense of groundedness, connection with the earth. So we're just trying things out, and we're not expecting a particular result. We're just sort of like playing a little bit, playing around. And it may be that along in the process, you find that this feels quite nice. And if it feels quite nice, we are onto a resource. So just maybe try and see if you can squeeze your feet a little bit, kind of push them a little bit harder into the floor, see what happens. Or if you're lying down, you could try and push maybe your legs or your arms to the ground and see what happens there. And then notice your alignment. Take a moment. And you could play around a little bit with how straight is your spine. So what you might do is just experiment a little bit and see if you can lengthen your spine for a moment. Almost imagine as if there is a string coming out of the top of your head and someone is pulling that string a little bit up, you know, like stretching you a bit taller. And try that, see how far you need to go to see if that feels any better. And as we do that, let your body make little movements. So very importantly, movement is such an important healing process. So being unstuck. So give your body permission just to move around a little bit to see if you can find that maybe a little micro movement. Maybe some little thing that makes you feel good right now. So as I'm doing it right now, I love moving my shoulders, going up to my hip. Just something about it that's quite magical. So sort of pulling your, in my case, pulling shoulders up, maybe a little stretching. And stretching my chest a little bit and see if there's anything for you. You may want to maybe stand up for a minute, do a little movement. That feels right for you. Or you might want to do the opposite. You may want to maybe sit down or lie down. That is what your body is asking. So just tune in. And only do what feels right for you, following the body's lead. Do what feels good. If it doesn't make any difference, then try something else. And to round off this exercise, see if it might feel good to put your hand somewhere, perhaps a bit like what I did before. Put a hand on your chest, maybe a hand on your belly. See, so touching yourself may be triggering, so don't do that. But maybe find something else that makes you feel better, that feels right, and promotes more sense of safety in your body. So for me, right now, in this moment, putting my one hand on my chest, the other hand on the belly, feels like I've got it. I've got you. So I'm telling little me now, I've got you. Yeah. And then maybe remember all the movements, little gestures that you did today. That could be something you would take away from the session. And see if you can build on that at some later point. And this is one somatic resource. We can have lots of somatic resources that we can build on or develop from scratch. So it's all about really tuning into your body and being in contact and following the body's lead. So it's very much body-led rather than led by your head. Okay, so let's now come out of the exercise. Come back gently. Open your eyes if they're closed. Welcome back. Again, just make sure you ground yourself. Ah, okay. And, you're welcome maybe to write in comments later. If you want to share anything about your experience, feel free to do that. Okay, and now over to you, Helen. We wanted to maybe show another short exercise.
Okay, thank you. Just waking myself up from that relaxing practice, re-engaging. So just building on that, we're going to just think a little bit about how do we sort of connect really with, identify and connect with the sort of body signature really of a vulnerable child, and how do we potentially meet that with some kind of action or body-based gesture as an antidote in terms of trying to foster feelings that may be relatively absent, so feelings such as safety or a feeling of greater calm. And the sort of ultimate aim really of this really short practice is to think about how do we enhance our connection with a vulnerable child using body-based ways of connecting and using a sort of embodied language really to try to build on both the client's connection with that side of themselves and our ability to come alongside in terms of offering a reparenting type capacity. So I'm going to invite you, if it feels right, to take part in a practice, to connect to your own vulnerability, and with all the sort of caveats that Janis offered. Please only do this if it feels right, and go with something that's relatively mild. Don't go to a sort of deep or difficult place for yourselves, and only do anything that feels right. And in this practice, we're not going to be sort of delving into the heart of vulnerability. We're going to be just dipping our toe in, just to get a sense of how do we come alongside these things in a sort of more body-focused way. Okay, so if it feels right, I'm going to ask you or invite you to close your eyes and to get in touch with the time when your vulnerable child or your feeling self was present. The time when you were aware of feelings, you had an emotional reaction, nothing too deep, just a time of connection with the more feeling side of you. What I want you to do is to turn towards and notice what's happening in your body. Notice what sensations are there. Notice where they are in your body, what part of your body. Notice the qualities of the sensation. Is there a stillness? Is there something shifting around? Kind of dull feeling or bold feeling? And also allow any images or memories or experiences that may attach to that feeling. Just let them be there. What I want you to do is to try to make safe contact with this feeling side of you. This might involve laying a hand on this particular part of your body, or if that doesn't feel right, just simply noticing that side, letting it feel that it's been seen and heard. You might want to place a hand on your heart, for example, or on your tummy. Or you might just want to just lay your hand gently so that there's awareness and connection. You might want to make a little movement, a little reminder of presence and connection. Do anything that feels a little bit better, that feels like connection, that feels safe. and that feels soothing. You might want to add a little message to the physical gesture to send to the feeling you. Maybe something such as, you're safe, you are loved, you matter. And just tune in to the effect of these words on your body, on the feeling you. Notice any little changes or any fluctuations. And if you feel like you want to, you can adjust where your hands or where your connection is with your body. Move it just a little bit to feel even safer and even more connected to the feeling you. What I want you to do now is to just focus in and spend a little time just connecting in to the feeling you, to your body, to the place where your body is holding some of the feeling you. Keep sending this side of you comforting gesture and comforting messages that you matter and that you're alongside in a safe and loving way. Just want you to deepen where you can and really take into your body any of those sensations that feel a little better, that offer some comfort, that offer connection, that feels acceptable to you right now. Just really try to connect in and allow that sense to really be with you and to really fill your body. And just stay with that for a moment or so. And then when it feels right, bring yourself back into the room and bring the safe sense of connection with you. If you stretch a little bit, just bring yourself, healthy adult 2, back into the room.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
That was lovely. I really enjoyed both of those exercises. Thank you, both of you. So, you have got a workshop coming up, haven't you, in June? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've got an in-person workshop in London, the 8th and 9th of June, where we'll be focusing on exactly the kind of things that we're talking about today. So the integration of these body methods into a schema therapy approach. It's going to be lively, so there's going to be lots of sort of live demos, video examples. It's going to be lots of chance to practice, lots of chance for lively discussion, and really to think about, how can we make the most of these ways of working? How can we use them to augment schema therapy practice? So, we'll be covering lots of things, really. I won't go through them all, but things like the theoretical underpinnings, the role of the body in trauma, talking about things like the fragmentation of the self. How do we work with clients to overcome barriers to working with the body? As Janis has said, it's not always the most straightforward routine for everyone. And how do we work with that in a kind of attuned and compassionate way? How do we use body tracking to become aware of signs of mode shifting, for example, mode signatures? How do we use the body to bring people out of dissociated states? And really, how do we enhance all of our interventions, whether it's a chair work practice or some imagery work or our reparenting, using the body and embodied ways of being. We'll also be thinking, as I sort of alluded to earlier, about things like how do we support people to have a more embodied sense of their own healthy adult, to be aware when this side is in the driving seat, again, thinking about body signature. And also, how do we bring online, playful child aspects? How do we really bring sort of body ways of being and playfulness into our clinical work and into our clients' lives?
Sounds like a really exciting workshop, and lovely to be doing it in person as well, particularly when you're focusing on the body. Yeah. It's really important. Mm.
Yeah. Just thank you, Helen, and thanks for the lovely exercise. And yeah, much more in my body now. I think maybe just to add to what Helen said, that the workshop isn't going to make you a body therapist, of course, because to become one, trainings can be long, within framework of specific other models and so on. So what this is about, and really, I think who it is for, are people who may be unsure how to bring body into their usual work. So it is helpful to know schema therapy framework, but it's not only for schema therapy. I think it's for everybody who's interested in integrating aspects in the work, working with the body, working with complex clients. And one of the things that we emphasize in the workshop is, of course, not just working with the client's bodies, working with our own, because, in the space when there are let's say two people in the room, what we get is not just one brain talking to another. We actually have one body and one nervous system implicitly talking to the other nervous system. And it's about being aware of the many layers of the conversation that happens. And that's why being aware and working with our own bodies is also so important. And, in terms of how embodied we are, how embodied is our healthy adult. So part of the workshop will be also focusing on ourselves, on our own triggers, managing our own, difficulties with clients. And that's why resourcing is both for the clients and also for ourselves very much. And, and I think this is one of the things that people often take away, thinking, the first person I'm going to help is me to manage sometimes difficult interactions in the therapy room. So amongst many things, this is, something I would say about that. And do come along. And it's also very exciting to do it in person. So there will be a lot of exercises, pair work, and so on. So they tend to be quite lively, exciting workshops. So do come along.
Sounds really great. I'm very much looking forward to coming along. So you were also saying that both of you co-authored a chapter in creative methods in schema therapy, which is one of my favourite schema therapy books. There's so many brilliant ideas in there. I think you edited it, didn't you, Helen?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So there's a chapter in the book around somatic approaches to schema therapy. So there's some more, I guess, in-depth discussions of some of the things that you've been talking about to us this evening there too. People want to look up, and I'll include the reference in the link, as well as in the comments underneath the video, as well as the link to your website and the leaflet for your workshop too. So thank you so much, both of you, for again coming and sharing your wisdom and giving us your time. I think the group are really going to value the bits, the nuggets that you've given us this evening of ways that they can enhance their work.
Thanks for having us, Jo. It's a real pleasure to be here and see you. And it's brilliant to have you at the workshop too. Yeah.
So lovely. Thank you very much, both of you. And we'll see you all again soon. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.